Previously on Wedge Live.
Just to remind everyone of what we believe here on this show, Spencer, do we have numbers 1 and 2 from Merle?
I hear people talking bad about the way they have to live here in this country. Harping on the wars we fight, griping about the way things ought to be. I don't mind them switching sides and standing up for things they believe in. When they're running down our country, man, they're walking on the fighting side of me.
They're walking on the fighting side of me. We have to take back our city. You need to go and vote on Tuesday to take back our city. And that means defeating candidates like Aisha Chugtai, who supports the leadership of Hamas.
We're rolling. We're rolling.
This is a real thing. Real thing.
None of you have the balls to stop this. Stop this.
I've got plenty of time. I have nothing else going on today.
We're in the Wedge neighborhood right now.
Let's get started, Jason. Play track 1, Kool and the Gang. Because that's what we believe on this show, Jason. We believe celebration. We're going to celebrate and have a good time. It's time to come together. It's up to you. What's your pleasure? Everyone around the world, come on. It's our celebration episode. We're celebrating last night's election. I don't know if that worked. We sat through a long segment of song. We're making fun of Bruce Dacus and his appearance on Right Wing Radio in Ward 10, which I enjoyed the hell out of. Jason, did you like that?
Yeah, it's not every day that you get to see somebody so thoroughly debase themselves in the waning days of an election.
We're back on the Wedge Live podcast for an election results episode with Jason Garcia, pundit extraordinaire Jason Garcia, and at the election desk, Josh Martin. So, big night. I was so happy last night. I cannot describe how happy I was and still am about last night's election results. 7 solid votes in the progressive majority on the city council at this point. Ward 8 didn't go the way a lot of progressives were hoping. Still a valiant effort. Ward 7, totally unexpected. The results there, Katie Cashman winning in a very tough place. But everything good that could have happened felt like it did happen, with the exception of... and Josh, I know you're probably broken up about this. What is the status of Ward 8?
So the status of Ward 8 is that Andrea Jenkins won by 38 votes. That is technically close enough, just barely, that it could have a publicly funded recount. The law for that is if it's a publicly funded recount is available if a candidate requests it and the margin is under half a percentage point, and the margin was around 0.47%. However, even if that were to happen, recounts very rarely change the outcome.
Yeah, it's a long shot. Do you know if it's going to happen? Because Josh, you're an insider. You're coming to us from within the Soren Stevenson campaign, basically.
Yeah, I do not know. A decision has not been made on that yet. I think people just need a moment to breathe over the campaign. So there's still conversations going on about that, and the campaign will let people know when they reach a decision on that.
Progressive majority, not veto-proof. So assuming Jenkins wins, Jenkins and Osman are both coming back, and they have kind of been the swing votes historically. So if you're going to get to a veto overriding majority, which is 9 votes, they will be key votes coming up in this next 2-year term. Mayor Frey no longer has a free hand. He's no longer got his rubber stamp council majority. Do you have any other initial reactions, Jason? How overjoyed were you last night?
I was pretty correct with my predictions in terms of all but 2 of the races. I would say there were only 2 that I wasn't certain how they would turn out, and that being Ward 7 and Ward 8. So
you and everybody else, Jason.
Yeah.
Ward 8 was supposed to be the sure thing, and 7 was supposed to be the impossible dream.
Yeah, I guess I didn't see Ward 8 as being a sure thing. I know from reviewing all sorts of past documents and stuff how much money Andrea has at her disposal. Certainly having Ilhan Omar trade endorsements with her was not optimal, running at a progressive against Andrea and things like that. That to me was a crushing defeat, and it was saved by the fact that Katie Cashman winning in 7 was an unexpected surprise victory. One of the things that I've been thinking about since last night and kind of being able to figure out the makeup of the new council is whether people like Andrea or Emily Koski move more to the left now that they're not necessarily surrounded by as many people to cover them on the right flank. It was brought up on Twitter by D.A. Bullock that, Andrea she won't have the opportunity to, vote with a losing vote now for progressive faith. She'll actually have to cast votes for progressive causes that will win if she wants to. So she's going to have kind of a moment of truth coming up.
Yeah, I think the Andrea Jenkins is either going to be mad at the left or more conciliatory. If she feels like this is a rebuke, which I think it is a rebuke, the idea may have been that Soren Steven was heavily favored going in, but that's still tough going up against a council president. That's tough to do. And coming this close is a rebuke of Andrea Jenkins, no doubt. And so she can either come at it conciliatory and be maybe I messed up here and I can do some things differently, or just spend 2 years thinking I don't really want this job in 2025 and I'm gonna settle some scores, and I no longer feel compelled to try to please the people that I used to. Josh, do you have any reactions? What hit you the hardest last night, aside from your doppelganger? You don't have a doppelganger headed to City Hall now, which I think was your dream. You have no one to look up to anymore. All the white men lost, except one, and you and I, Josh, we don't have any role models. We don't have any good, positive role models in the city because all of them lost except Michael Rainville.
Yeah, so I think similar to others, and certainly as a Ward 8 resident, someone the Ward 8 campaign, I was pretty devastated by the loss of Soren Stevenson. In some ways, it hurts more that it was so close because it's like, oh man, you start thinking about if only I had done this differently, maybe it could have turned out differently. Yeah, and then the saving grace is that at least because we managed to pull out 7, then we still have a progressive council majority now. Those are the main takeaways. Everything else pretty much went the way the conventional wisdom expected.
It reminds me of 2017 because I had a friend, Jana Flisrand, running in Ward 7 and ran an excellent campaign, raised a lot of money, had a lot of support, very well organized, and Lisa Goodman won by a comfortable amount. And we had some hopes. And in 2017, the whole city, it was a progressive wave that year, and things in the city were feeling really good. And meanwhile, in Ward 7, my friends were feeling really bad, but it'll get better, Josh.
Yeah, I think so. It is heartening that it was, although in some ways disappointing, it's also heartening that it was only a loss by 38 votes. I think there will certainly be a progressive candidate again in 2025, whether Jenkins runs again or not. It's far too early to tell who that will be at this point, but I'm ready to knock some doors for him.
Josh, do you have any sense of what approach Andrea Jenkins will take? Will she be more conciliatory? Will she take this as a rebuke and be like, maybe I need a new approach here? She's not going to be council president. That's another thing. I don't know if this is not the job Andrea Jenkins wanted. She wanted to be council president. She wanted to save the Fry majority. Now she is in the minority. And will she be even less interested in the job than she already appeared to be when she was leading the body? Do you have any thoughts that way?
Yeah, I think that is interesting. Both Andrea Jenkins and Linnea Palmisano, they won their election, but because of the way the rest of the city went, I think there's a very high likelihood that neither of them is in council leadership anymore next year. So in another way, they lost. So we'll see what happens there. I do think that will be a blow to both of them. As for what people do going forward with that, there's a lot to factor into that. Are people going to run for re-election again? And also beyond that, what do they want to do with the time they have in office, whether they're going to run for re-election again or not? Certainly they could just entrench as a minority and try to block the progressive majority at every turn. Would that be the most effective thing for them in accomplishing their goals? Or would they be able to get more done and get choicer committee assignments and things like that if they are willing to play ball with the progressive majority? And I think that's part of the calculus, not just for Andrea and Linnea, but for all of the pragmatic progressive council members, as all of Minneapolis deems them.
Jason, I want to do some things. I don't want 2 years of mayoral vetoes and grandstanding and us versus them. I want to come together as the song we played at the beginning of the episode. We're going to celebrate and have a good time, but it's time to come together. It's up to you. What's your pleasure? Can we accomplish things? I think of the Minneapolis at its best is we're doing innovative policies and we're accomplishing things, and the nation is celebrating us for how good we are. Can we do good things? Can we just not have 2 years of mayoral vetoes and fighting now, or is that inevitable?
I think there will be a lot of vetoes, at least if people like Jenkins or Koski or Osmond don't show that they're willing to break with their, former conservative blockmates and swing more progressive. And I think certainly Jacob Fry's temperament is that he will test that. I am heartened and hopeful, though, because looking back after the 2017 election, there were a lot of things that went through. It wasn't as intransigent as our most recent council, Andrea and Linnea, and even Lisa Goodman, joined in with the progressive majority to pass a lot of things. I mean, look, the 2040 plan got passed almost unanimously in that. And I'm hopeful that we'll see a return to that sort of, not unanimity necessarily, but at least willingness to work with each other. And, I also think that we could see some continued interpersonal conflicts, not just between, for example, the mayor and his constant criticism and pettiness toward Robin Wansley. Also, it's been pointed out that Latricia Vitaw has had not the best relationship with people on the progressive side and things like that. And I don't think that that's fully going to go away, but I'm hopeful that that will recede a bit, and some of those people who do consider themselves moderates or centrists or things like that will be willing to work with the new progressive majority to help pass some of the ordinances and actions that a lot of the city clearly is looking for.
I'm vowing to take more bike rides with Linnea Palmisano. I'm going to bring the city together by riding bikes with Linnea Palmisano. Maybe Emily Koski will come on a bike ride with me, and we're going to heal this city.
Yeah.
That's what I'm hoping for. Do you want to go through the wards real quick? Ward 5, no Trumper. This is a case where I think Victor Martinez just hung around too long. We know him too well. He has run too many scams. We know what he's about. And we're just done with it. There was a lot of, and I share this, the fear that was coming into election day, can he really do it? His turnout so low in Ward 5. He's just going to bring everyone from his anti-LGBTQ church and steal this one for the Trumpers. But it didn't work out that way. I think we are smart to his game, and comfortable win for Ellison.
Yeah, I think it really made it clear that, his success, such as it was in 2021, was largely predicated on having a big plurality within that ward. Once it was basically him straight up against Jeremiah Ellison, there was no point where it looked no point from the beginning, with many questionable electronic signed up delegates before the convention, until now, that it seemed reasonable that he was going to mount a serious challenge. I think last election cycle, he benefited immensely by having somebody who was maybe a stronger challenger to Jeremiah, who elected not to run again this term, despite having some very progressive precincts and some very conservative precincts. Ward 5 isn't going to embrace somebody like Victor Martinez. And when you look at the people who have helped with his campaigns, the people who have thrown themselves behind him, I hope that they see that as a repudiation of them and their tactics as well. That we're moving past that. And also it raises the question of, in a low turnout election, does that still favor conservatives, especially in Minneapolis? We certainly see a lot of excitement and turnout for progressive candidates this cycle. Like you mentioned, Soren Stevenson taking Andrea Jenkins to the brink. Andrea has been embedded in city government for so long. Just the concept of a political newcomer being so close seemed like a completely foreign concept. And looking at how deftly and definitively a lot of the DSA and Minneapolis for the Many candidates performed, you could maybe say that in Minneapolis, in these off election years, that favors the progressives.
Yeah. I had a little conversation with David Brower about like maybe low turnout isn't so bad. But it definitely kind of favors the well-organized campaigns, the more people with more passionate support. I've been talking a lot about candidate quality recently and how I'm like bemoaning the quality of the people running for local office. And I'm worried that it's like become such a terrible, miserable job that good people won't do it. And here in 2023, I am celebrating the quality. I think candidate quality was so determinative, more than ideology, really. Like we're celebrating this as like progressive win, progressive candidates won. But that has to do with the fact that like the All of Minneapolis side, Team Fry, ran some real clunkers, like Scott Graham, oof, Bruce Dacus. I mean, that guy seems, I said this on Twitter, like seems like he only talks to people in the comment section on a crime Facebook page who like tell him he's great and like, let's beat this lady and get her out of here. Like whatever you think of Aisha Chugtai as a council member, she's doing the work and like talking to the ward in a language we all can recognize, like in a common language, like trying to speak to people. I've seen her at neighborhood association meetings in East Bay, Makaska, where probably not the most friendly place, but she's there talking to them. And like Dacus just has a bunch of talking points from the crime pages. Josh, do you have any thoughts about candidate quality? Do you see the same thing that I'm seeing about how so much better the progressive candidates were this year? Like Aurin in Ward 12, like prepared, smart, know what they're talking about, have a positive vision, are not appealing exclusively to a base of cranks.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think the other faction in Minneapolis, whatever we want to call them, has some work to do on their messaging and their candidate recruitment. They're doing some interesting things, not only running people like Scott Graham and Luther Randheim, but running people like Bruce Dacus and having the Star Tribune editorial board endorse people like Bruce Dacus and Dan Orban, just lighting whatever credibility they have left on fire. So if I was somebody on that side, which I am not, I would be looking at some of these choices and be like, right. I don't know if that's good for them.
Right. It seems like their side is run by the extremists, and it's like we need to get people who agree with us entirely, forgetting about like we have to get to 50% somehow.
No, they're pragmatic progressives, John. We're the extremists. Don't get it confused.
That's right. Thank you, Josh. So when I think back to earlier this year, in 7 and 8 in particular, I talked to some people who were recruiting candidates in 7 as like, how is no one running? Like it was a panic. We need a candidate in 7 or we're just going to hand this off to Lisa Goodman's handpicked successor. Get us a candidate. And they ended up finding such an amazing candidate. This year could have gone so differently if people hadn't worked very hard to like, who do we know that can run? Do we know any smart people who would be good for this? And they found one. Like that was such a big deal that like, I don't know if anyone is going to think back to that except for the people who were involved in those discussions. And Josh, I know you were involved in similar discussions in 8. Like candidates don't just appear for no reason. A lot of times it's like people got together and were like, someone needs to take this on and do this work and make their life miserable for, 8 months or whatever.
Yeah. And I mean, I'm not going to, betray any confidence in any discussions I was in any of the wards, but without naming names, I will say that a lot of these recruitment efforts, people only see the end product. But often these are conversations that go on for months before a candidate emerges, and you see the person who said yes and agreed to run. You don't see all the people who said no before that.
In 7, they could not have found anyone better. Maybe a lot of people said no in 7, but the absolute right person said yes, and amazing job, I think.
Yeah, I'm very excited for Katie Cashman in Ward 7. And I think, to be clear, and I think we found a great candidate in Ward 8 as well,
Oh
and it
yeah,
didn't work out. I'm not criticizing the candidates that ended up. I just know there's a lot that goes into that process.
as I said before, like people underestimate the mountain that Soren was trying to climb in 8, even though Ward 8 is a very progressive place that is in line with his campaign platform. Like, it's tough to unseat Andrea Jenkins, the sitting city council president, with her profile.
You know, when you look at the two big PACs that really, I don't know, took up a lot of space in people's discussions of this election, when you compare the candidate quality of the All of Minneapolis side versus the Minneapolis for the Many side, much to your earlier point, you have just a slate of, for the most part, old, white, conservative men against a very dynamic, young, well-spoken, intelligent group of people who represent a lot of different parts of the city of Minneapolis. I think it'll be interesting to see how the All of Minneapolis side tries to navigate that in the future. To Josh's point, you know, that it's not easy to find good candidates, and when you especially put the limitations on yourself of saying we're going to all vote in lockstep, we're not going to have any sort of real hint of real progressivism or things like that, you're just putting yourself in such a box. It's very difficult. And you know, Andrea Jenkins had previous things that she has done to lean on to say, like, no, look, I actually have progressive credentials. I am a Black trans woman, and you know, I've been a part of the progressive movement for a long time. Whereas people like Scott and Bruce and Luther, they don't have anything to lean on aside from getting a lot of money from landlords.
Do we think All of Minneapolis is coming back next time? I tweeted earlier today that I expected that was just going to be a disposable wrapper for the Chamber of Commerce that they would get rid of after 21 and come back as like something else, different name.
All of Minneapolis too. More Minneapolis.
What is the future of rich white assholes buying local elections? Similar to Victor Martinez, have they stuck around too long and tried the same tactics for too long and were smart to their game? And can we glean anything from what happened with outside spending this year? I think one takeaway I have is like the power of very high quality, again, well-organized candidates really trumps outside spending, the independent expenditures.
Giving directly to a campaign or volunteering directly for a campaign, I think, is generally the choice you want to make. If you're someone who's in a position where you have resources to give beyond that, then maybe look at the IEs as well. But yeah, you know, a campaign is able to deliver their message. They're able to customize their message to the ward and the people they're reaching out to. That's a little more challenging for an IE that's running effectively a citywide campaign. As much as you might try to tailor your message in each ward, people are still aware of the message you're putting out there in the other wards. You get tied to those other people. On the other hand, you know, money helps. Money helps get mailers out there. It helps get eyeballs on ads. So it does help to, I think, to have those IEs out there as well. And although we did have a good result, a lot of the elections, even the ones where the progressive won, were very close and could have easily gone another way had things gone differently. So I think that even though all of Minneapolis didn't get all the results they wanted, I think they still had quite an impact. And I do think Minneapolis for the Many had quite an impact as well, which is impressive since they were outspent by, I don't know, 5-1 or something. We'll see what the final total is when we get the last reports. But
are the rich white assholes coming back for another go? Are they coming for us again in 25?
Yeah, we're never going to get rid of them.
Okay.
I think this might be what causes them to shed their wrapper, as you said, because they didn't win this time. Last time they had success under the All of Minneapolis moniker, and So that, I think, encouraged them to bring it back and try to capitalize on that success from last time. This time, they roundly got rejected. So I imagine that we'll see a different front for the Minnesota Multi-Housing Association and the Chamber of Commerce. I think that, the same group of people, the Kelly Dorans and that whole crowd who funded all of Minneapolis, they're still going to be looking to use their money to exert influence going forward. They certainly have used that money to influence the mayor on things like rent stabilization. I think until that changes, they're never really going to go away. I think what we may be seeing is a generational shift where hopefully enough of my generation, Gen X, is still holding on to some of our progressive ideas and ideologies from, when we were youth in the 90s, that we're not turning into quite as much of a conservative mob as baby boomers did. And pairing that with certainly your generation, millennials, sort of coming into their own as a large voting bloc, and Gen Z, my son's voting bloc, who were very mobilized from what I saw in this election cycle to support candidates who run under the DSA banner and things like that. It could spell the end for some of the success that old white men have. But, they also have tactics like running Don Samuels. So maybe not just running old white men, but finding older people who share their conservative ideologies as well.
I feel like Don Samuels risks sticking around too long. I don't know that if he plans to come back, he's going to give it one more try and I'll get over the hump. I think give it one more try and you're going to fall down the hill kind of thing, like Victor Martinez.
We can hope.
That's what I think. Some people just need to hang it up.
We may find out. It sounds like he's going to run again next year. So
well, good for him. Just like I hope Luther Ranheim comes back next time and Scott Graham. Give it another try, guys. I know I keep coming back to this, but I think a lot about demographics and it's generational. There is race and gender and generational. And when I look at candidates who make me hopeful about the future, it was not Scott Graham. Yeah. Even someone in Kenwood, looking at these two candidates between Katie Cashman and Scott Graham, who makes me feel hopeful about the future? Who would I want to spend time having a stimulating conversation with? It's not Scott Graham. It's just not. And Aurin, likewise. Those were the two that really stood out to me, the difference in age. It's generational, it's gender, it's positivity and knowing what you're talking about. I don't want to make it all about demographics. There's a level of knowing what you're talking about and inspiring confidence that I appreciated in those candidates too. But I don't know. I keep thinking about those things. Josh, do you have turnout numbers for us? Is there anything to glean? What's going on with turnout? Were we extremely low?
Turnout was, it looks like it was 78,657 votes. Obviously that's way lower than 2021, but that was never going to be a good comparison. It's a little lower also than 2017, which was about 106,000 votes. Let's see if we can go further back here. 2013 was 80,099 votes. So it was closer to 2013 turnout citywide. However, because there was no citywide election, that varied a lot by ward, depending on, how competitive the ward election was. For instance, Ward 8 was closer to 2017 levels of turnout. So I would imagine the same might be the case in some of the other competitive wards.
Tell me about 7.
7 was 7,988 votes. So let's see, in 2017, it was 92-55. So yeah, still down, but not drastically. So reasonably comparable to
Tell me about
2017
12.
numbers.
Tell me about 12. I'm going to give you orders now.
So Ward 12 was 12,167 votes, so the highest turnout in the city, higher than Ward 13 this year, which makes sense because they had a slightly more competitive election than Ward 13. And Ward 12 in 2017 was 10,704, so they actually went up compared to 2017.
Did Andrew Johnson have an opponent in 2017? I don't think he was getting
opponent
challenged.
is a strong word. It does appear there were some other people on the ballot, but I do not recognize their names, and they did not do very well. Someone named Will Yeager and someone named Harrison Bullard.
Okay, I never heard those names before, so those were not serious challengers. So even more credit to Aurin. What was the result there? Because winning in an extremely high turnout year in that ward. Much credit to the victor in that case.
Yeah, so Aurin, 54% of first choice votes compared to 37% for Luther Ranheim and 10% for Nancy Ford.
Good job. I see Aurin as probably like stabilizing in Ward 12. That's just going to be her seat. I don't know that that's a huge target for the All of Minneapolis crowd going forward. Do you both agree with me there?
I would like to say yes, given the fact that, she did win handily on the first choice votes. I think Nancy Ford may be the Victor Martinez of that part of South Minneapolis, and that she'll probably hang around and keep running with diminishing returns.
The way I put it is she's going to keep doing the Homer Simpson fall down the hill. That's how I put it.
But, they may look at that and say, that at some point, maybe that will give us enough of a plurality that we could challenge. But I think that the demographics of Ward 12 have shifted to the point where hopefully they'll look at that and say it's not going to be worth sinking all of the money into that ward the way that it could have been, had this been a different result.
I would point out all of Minneapolis is still beating their heads against the wall in Ward 10. So if they're doing that, I think they'll probably still target Ward 12, which is maybe a little more in play for them than Ward 10. Also, we have to keep in mind the All of Minneapolis crowd is in the minority on the council now. So if they want to change that and regain the majority, they have to play offense somewhere in 2025. They can't just play defense.
7.
Absolutely. They
also, Michael Rainville needs an opponent. Talking about candidate recruitment.
Yeah.
How did we flip 7 and nobody of note decided to challenge Michael Rainville?
Absolutely, they will target 7, but you don't want to put all your eggs in one basket. You want to, they might not win 7, so you got to have a few backup plans. As for Ward 3, that's one where we'll have to do some more candidate recruitment on the progressive side. I still think that one could be in play for progressives in the right year.
You know what I say? I say draft Amity Foster. Amity Foster, if you're listening, this is on you. It's your fault Michael Rainville is still a council member because you decided to sit on your ass and live a happy, contented life.
The day after election day may be a little early to start doing.
It's 2 years away, Josh. 2 years.
That's something else that I wanted to bring up with discussing voter turnout is this is a very unique situation for Minneapolis in that, we just had a city council election 2 years ago. We're going to have another city council election in 2 years. We're in the middle of how many years straight of elections, Josh?
Since 2020? Yeah, we would have had 2019 off.
Yeah.
So 2020, 21, 22, 23. So 4 years so far, and then we'll have 24, 25, and then 26, and we'll finally get a year off in 2027.
Oh my God. In 2024, we're going to re-elect Donald Trump. You imagine the chaos, and I don't know that we're going to reelect Donald Trump, but like we could.
It could happen. Yeah.
That could be the wake of that, like, democracy shattering event could be the environment in which we run an election for city council, which is similar to what happened in 2017. And I am not hoping for a repeat of the environment of 2017 because that was awful for this country. But like that could be the disaster that frames that election in the city in 25 is like whatever happens in 24.
Backlash against Trump, sure.
Yeah.
So another 2017 type year.
I don't know. I don't know that I would wish Donald Trump on the country.
No, I said that, Josh. No. Let's not do that. I would take Scott Graham in every ward in the city to avoid that happening.
Yeah, but so we're in the middle of basically 7 years straight of having an election every single fall, which is draining.
Election judges are getting paid. Me and Josh, we're getting paid.
I wasn't an election judge this year.
Shame
I
on
moved
you.
moved over to the dirty partisan side this year.
But, you know, it's very draining, I think, for a lot of the excitement that people have, especially compared to a presidential election year, where you see so much turnout. Like, it's so strange to me to describe this year as an off election year. I think that has played with the psyche a bit of Minneapolis voters, and maybe there are some people, I guess, like myself, who just are like, yep, it's the fall, it's time to vote again. But I think that there are also a lot of people who are just worn out of it. You know, since 2016, it's been a brutal slog of elections nationally and locally. And it's going to be, I think, harder and harder for people who occupy that middle ground to get excited about candidates, to get excited about volunteering with another campaign, to get excited about even just paying attention to another round of candidates. You know, to your point, John, there are wards, obviously, like 7, 12, 5, where the people with money are going to go on offense. But we also have to look at who the candidates are going to be. We have to look at what's going to happen if Andrea Jenkins chooses to retire, if Latricia Vitaw decides to run for mayor or something like that. All of a sudden, that will shift the dynamic of Ward 4. You know, there's a lot that can happen in these next few years that I think the 2025 election is going to look completely different than what we've seen the past 2 cycles in terms of the personalities.
And speaking of candidate recruitment, like, who's going to run for mayor? Please, someone with a profile, with just get in early, someone hugely famous. I just want to get behind anyone with a profile and a huge political operation.
It sounds like you're trying to volunteer yourself here.
Cover themselves in glory. Yeah. Wedge Live for mayor. I will be the Bob again of the 25 election. Wedge again.
I mean, you have a profile.
It's true. Transportation NIMBYism had a total wipeout this year. This is an issue near and dear to my heart. And candidates who demagogued all over, you know, alternatives to driving in the city, they didn't get anywhere in 7, in 12, in 13. I know, Jason, you will chastise me for celebrating my good friend Lene Palmisano's victory in Ward 13, but she was supportive. She's supportive of reducing vehicle miles traveled. She likes the new Bryan Avenue. She had a lot of good stuff to say on our bike ride about transportation.
And how does she vote on those things?
I believe she voted for the Transportation Action Plan. And she didn't see my bar for Palmisano is kind of low because as long as she's not making trouble,
white people.
As long as she's not making trouble, a thumbs up, Councilmember Palmisano. So I know I had some good conversations with Kate Mortensen too, but like her transportation worldview is just not my thing. There was at a certain point she was like, "Do you know chicanes mean trickery?" like in French. I think maybe it's French. Like it means trickery. Like it's traffic calming. Okay, just stop searching for the root word of chicane to make it seem like we're tricking drivers into driving slow. Like, just drive slower. It's fine. You're going to get where you're going. It's still convenient. Luther Ranheim in Ward 12 pledging to defund the city's bike lanes. I don't know that he wanted that to be public because he said it in private to a bunch of landlords, but he lost. Good riddance, Luther Ranheim, and your bike defunding platform. And Scott Graham, who was lying to people in Ward 7 that he's going to revisit the Hennepin Avenue plan and like redo it as it's underway. You can't do that, Scott Graham. You shouldn't have lied to people. And you should support transportation alternatives. If you do come back in 25, Scott Graham, to fall down the hill again, just reconsider your transportation positions and don't lie to people about it.
When you ask a landlord about transportation things, I think that they see the extra dollars they get to charge for parking spaces and things like that, and really it's just a positive for them to encourage people to depend on cars and have to pay extra on top of their already skyrocketing rent for a parking place.
Josh, did you have something to add?
Oh, I was going to certainly it's not realistic to revisit the infrastructure of Hennepin Avenue. That was never going to happen, even if Scott Graham had been elected. But now that there has been a shakeup in the council membership, there's been some talk of revisiting the hours of operation of the bus lanes on Hennepin, which is much more plausible. You don't need to you don't need to tear up any concrete or adjust any plans for that. And I don't know whether that will happen for sure, but like the logic seems reasonably sound. If everybody who previously voted the same way on that, and you add in some of the new council members, you probably have 9 votes to override a veto on 24/7 bus lanes now.
Let's take it to the courts. Let's have a battle over mayoral power when it comes to bus lanes in the courts. Let's do it. 5 years of legal wrangling.
So environmental studies, all kinds of things.
Yeah, I'm just happy not to have a saboteur at City Hall anymore. And I'm speaking of Lisa Goodman, who was the wrecking ball of so many transportation things. It's so nice. Did a lot of stuff behind the scenes. She doesn't get credit for all the terrible things she did unseen and unheard. Had a real big personality, but it was the behind the scenes stuff that really made the difference with Lisa Goodman.
Do you see anybody stepping into that role?
The Goodman role of saboteur?
Yeah.
No. As Paul Masano said on our bike ride, council is losing a lot of institutional memory and longevity. Goodman is most of it. Paul Masano is now the longest serving member, and I don't know that she's as wily and she's not the strong personality that Lisa Goodman is, and is probably not going to be threatening people's jobs if they don't do what she says, which is what Lisa Goodman was all about.
So here is something that I'm going to have a callback to when you and I, John, did a podcast with Jono, where I said that I felt like Latricia Vita was the one who would win in a wrestling match because she fights dirty. And I feel like she may not have the length of career that Lisa Goodman did, but I feel like she definitely has the tenaciousness or pugnaciousness, if you prefer.
Oh, she has hate in her heart. She yelled at me at Open Streets once, so she has the hate in her heart to pull that off, yeah.
So I feel like she could step into that role and be threatening people behind the scenes, be saying, in 2 years I'm going to be mayor, and I will, if you don't appease me now, I will get rid of you then, and things like that.
Yeah. So there's an element of Goodman that is both charming and bullying. Where I think,
do not understand how you are so charmed by that woman.
I'm not saying that I'm madly in love. I'm saying that she can win people over. She is funny. She has wit. And she can be fun to be around, even if you maybe don't appreciate her politics. And I'm not saying I've spent time with Lisa Goodman. I'm just saying I see how could be a fun person for people to be around. I can't speak to Councilmember Vital's personality, but she seems driven by resentments and like holds grudges in a way that Lisa Goodman probably did too. But I don't see the fun side of Councilmember Vital. I see someone who is driven by settling scores, and I don't know what the positive is, but I don't know her that well, so maybe I'm missing something.
I'm still just baffled by the fact that you find Lisa Goodman so compelling and so. You
refuse to understand what I'm saying. Josh, back me up. Back me up.
I think you're maybe trying to say Lisa Goodman is compelling to some people, and that explains why she had such a strong appeal and hold on her ward for so long. I know part of the theory of the case for Cashman was that what was so popular about Goodman was not necessarily her politics, but Lisa Goodman herself, the package, her constituent services, things like that. That seems to have paid off somewhat.
So there are moments when, like, I agree with Lisa Goodman. Like, sometimes somebody says something at, like, a zoning meeting, and she's like, the effectively, like, what you have said is so stupid, and here's why. Like, her put downs can be fun and hilarious. So I'm saying, like, if she is ever on your side, if she is ever on your side, you're like, right on, Lisa Goodman, stick it to them. And so I can see how people who support her are like saying what needs to be said, straight talking Lisa Goodman. Isn't she great? I'm totally right about this. And Jason, you just want to be obstinate here.
I would just never choose the word compelling to describe Lisa Goodman.
In the way villains...
she compels me to give to her opponents. She compels me to not want to live in Ward 7, but I don't think that makes her a compelling person.
Have you ever watched a movie with like a very charming villain and you don't necessarily root for them, but you're like, wow, isn't that guy interesting? No? Is that not a concept, a very charming villain?
I just don't think
that, absolutely. Yeah.
Sure. I just don't think that Josh and I are as easily swayed as you.
No one has been more critical of Lisa Goodman than me. I just recognize people's good qualities. Unlike you, you're blinded by your hatred. This segment has gone on too long.
Hatred.
This Lisa Goodman segment has gone on too long.
And I feel like everyone's time is being taken up, including all of the people in the audience.
Yeah, see, sassy Lisa Goodman, isn't she compelling?
I could do this all day. I've got plenty of time.
Are you gonna need new soundboard quotes now with Lisa Goodman gone, or will this quote just like outlive Lisa Goodman's tenure on the council?
If there's one thing about Wedge Live, I don't mind making references that no one understands. It's like every 2 years, there's like a new audience of people who've only been paying attention to politics for like 6 months. Do you ever run into these people who are so passionate about politics and you like make a reference that's 2 years old and they have no clue? Like, how are you this confident about your opinions and you don't understand my 2-year-old reference? I don't mind being the person with a long memory, making the old references that no one gets, being the old guy. I'm the new David Brower. Forget Larry Jacobs. I'm the new David Brower. Eat your heart out.
Wow. Larry Jacobs catching strays on the Wedge Live podcast.
Josh, you can be the new Larry Jacobs. And
you've already dubbed me that a few times. Okay. Yeah.
Well, you can keep being it. You can hold on to that title. Right. I don't want it anymore. What is this huge, smashing, overjoyed, this feeling of being overjoyed that we have right now? What does it mean for 2025? I think the mayor is going to run against this new council majority, and there might be a temptation to run the socialism, defund, abolish. Aren't these people crazy? Look at these DSA terrorists coming for our city, going to destroy Minneapolis kind of campaign. And I hope that we can do some productive things, maybe to counteract that and like govern well. as a council majority. But Jason, do you have any thoughts about what comes next in 25?
I think that with the 2024 presidential election coming and other elections as well, we're going to hear the word socialism hammered so many times that I feel like by 2025 it's going to be passé. It's not going to have as much fear behind it as people have tried to instill. I think even this year, people tried to use their mini Red Scare and the anti-socialism, anti-DSA rhetoric really to very little effect. And I think after another national election, it's going to be even less compelling to people. So I feel like there's going to have to be a change of tactic in the city. We're going to be, a half decade away from the start of the COVID pandemic and the associated spike in crime and things like that. My suspicion is that we're at that point, everything is going to be kind of focused on the economy, and people are going to be talking about jobs, minimum wage, things like that. Because I think that, the business owner side of things are going to be saying, we're still not seeing things the same way that things were before COVID. We need more relief. We need to have, we need to look at finding ways to make Minnesota and Minneapolis more business friendly and things like that. That would be my impression of where 2025 will lie. There will probably be a lot of things like, how do we open up the north side to bigger businesses where there's still cheap or cheaper real estate and things like that.
Josh, what does the future hold? What's coming?
So I think we maybe can look at, where kind of the battlegrounds are going to be. Trying to guess the issues, hard to say. I would guess policing and public safety will be a part of it. I think we're just stuck with that for a while. Housing's probably going to be a big issue, that deservedly so. That's a big issue that needs to continue to be addressed. And yeah, there might be some of these economic issues as well. Mayor certainly is going to be huge. I would guess many of the battleground wards may be similar to what they were this year. I would guess 7 and 8 again for sure. Beyond that, we'll have to see what shapes up in the other wards.
3. Let's make 3 a battleground.
Well, we'll try. But in terms of what's going to happen in those elections, I don't think we can draw many conclusions from this election. And that's because this election is so weird. It was council only. That's the first time that's ever happened before. It won't happen again for 20 years. So I think our ability to draw conclusions in what's going to happen in 2025 from what happened in this election is limited.
Well, the conclusion I'm drawing is recruit good candidates. And yeah, that's it. Let's get some really good candidates because the message is compelling. As long as we have a strong people who can organize and be compelling and who care about doing good work, things will work out for us.
Yeah, and I would also like to point out that effort really that wasn't new to this election cycle. In 2021, we elected some really good candidates on the progressive side, some very young, dynamic people. Aisha Chugtai, Robin Wansley, Jason Chavez, who, both of his legislative aides have gone on to become electeds themselves.
Yep.
I think that is what gives me the most hope for the future, is that we're not just seeing these people come up as sort of one-off candidates or like kind of a superstar in one ward that pops up out of nowhere. We're seeing a sustained effort coming from a group of young people who work together, who know each other, who understand the mechanics of City Hall, who have in a lot of cases been working there with other progressives and building networks. And I think that, hopefully that's going to keep paying off in 2025, that we'll see more progressive candidates coming through from different wards as well.
I do think one thing I really want to mention is there's another thing that's unusual about this election, and that's that because of Andrew Johnson resigning, Aurin Chowdhury in Ward 12 will actually be taking office this year rather than in January to fill out the remainder of his term. And that could have some pretty big impacts on things like the city budget.
I can't wait to hear about how the city is bleeding because Aurin didn't vote to fund a certain number of imaginary cops or whatever the invented police are starved for resources issue will be during the budget fight. Hopefully we don't do that, but that'll be fun if it does.
Just, to go back to our theme of celebration, John, just on a personal note for you, I would like to congratulate you on seeing Alicia Gibson, who came in to endorse a candidate in a city she no longer lives in, being roundly rebuffed by our ward.
Yeah. Let's just sit here and listen to Celebration for another 3 minutes because of that. So crusty longtime residents of Ward 10 need to do a better job finding credible standard bearers for whatever it is they believe. If they have any positive agenda, get with the times, because the same yards year after year is just whatever terrible candidate is coming along. Have some standards. You can just not support a candidate. That's viable. The Star Tribune editorial board too. You can choose not to support someone. One of the things that I've gotten a little leery of is making endorsements, because I don't necessarily like vouching for people unless I really do believe in them. Mm-hmm. And just having a preference this person is better than the alternative doesn't feel like enough for me to say I stand behind this person just because they may be better than the terrible alternative. So I really want to believe in someone before I endorse them. And I don't have a yard for a yard sign, but that would be my standard for putting yards in my yard sign. Am I not embarrassed to stand with this person?
Putting yards in your yard sign?
Maybe.
You would think that would be the easiest bar to clear is am I going to be embarrassed that I have this person's sign in my yard?
Yeah.
When they lose by a huge number of votes.
Well, not just that, when they say incredibly stupid things. I don't care how much they lose by, but are they an embarrassing person?
I mean,
no shame in supporting a candidate who can't win, Jason.
I think that if you're thinking of some of the yards and yard signs that are in the few blocks surrounding where I live, if you're the sort of person who perhaps used to be on city council and consistently puts out yard signs for some of the most embarrassing candidates possible, and year after year you see them lose, maybe you would reevaluate what it is that you're supporting and whether or not you really represent what the city is looking for.
Yeah. And I have no idea who you're talking about, Jason. I don't know who that would be.
Purely hypothetical.
Somebody who maybe lost an election in the 2013 era.
Yeah.
Ward 10. That kind of person. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and somebody who has been out of the public eye for a decade and still feels like they're sort of the superintendent of the neighborhood or something.
Yeah. We're trying to help recruit viable candidates who speak to the entire ward, please, because I don't know, a meteor could hit and one of those candidates could accidentally win, and that would be bad.
Yeah.
So let's have better candidates on both sides. That's the message of unity that we close the show with. Progressives are doing the work of having good candidates. Bad guys, you should recruit good candidates too, because you might win one day, and I don't want to live in a city ruled by terribly corrupt or incompetent people. That would be wrong.
Yeah, it would be like waking up and finding out that Michael Rainville had become mayor.
Yeah, or the food fraud guy won in Ward 6. Wouldn't that be bad? Okay. Thank you to Josh Martin and Jason Garcia for joining me for the special celebration of election 2023. This has been the Wedge Live podcast. I'm your host, John Edwards. Thank you for listening.
A celebration to last throughout the years.